Welcome to Brightly You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we use our good and bad experiences, friendship, and passions to inspire thought-provoking conversation and soul-driven advice to better help you create a life worth living and step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Hi, Tracy.
Hey, Amy.
So, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Like, really?
I'm a lot. Does that cover it? I'm just a lot right now. Is that it? If somebody ever if you were to be like, "Hey, how you doing?" and they're just like, "I'm a lot." Do you want to pick a topic? No, I'm kidding. Thank you for asking. So yeah, I'm a little much right now, which you kind of get info dumped every time we do our pre-show meeting lately. Thank you for your friendship and support and letting me record it this time. um so as I've alluded to, I have had some health stuff going on. About 15 years of a cyclical chronic pain situation that I through persistence and tenacity and being me, I got into the Mayo Clinic and they think they figured it out. So I'm about to find out if we did, right? I'm about to find out um I'm about to find out if some really significant choices I've made both this year and the past 10 years are about to pay off. And
Wow.
yeah. And so when I say I'm a lot, that's a huge part of it, is not just like that normal, like, oh, I'm going to have surgery, right? And everything that comes with that. But I've accepted or made a lot of trade-offs along the way on this journey to get this figured out. And the outcome still isn't clear. And so
Right. And it
uh,
won't be for a while, right?
and it won't be for a while.
Yeah.
All of this could be for nothing. All of this, we talked about superstitions in our last episode. There's a big part of me that's like, this is gonna solve every problem in your life. This is you're gonna win the lottery with this one. It's gonna fix problems you didn't know you had, which is not a reasonable, mature thought, but it's not a harmful one. So
It's not.
but with that, uh, as we've talked a lot privately, that um the outcome of this surgery is a bit more than physical. That if this surgery doesn't fix it, this is it for me. Where do you go after the Mayo, right? Like if the Mayo can't figure you out. I mean, the first thing one of the surgeons said to me after hearing my symptoms, he immediately had an idea of what it was, turned and looked at me and said, "Your options suck." And I knew in that moment he got it, and that he knew I had some ideas of what it could be at the time. And
That had to
that,
be so validating, though, just for him to
right?
say that to you.
Thank you. A lot of people I've shared that story with go, "Oh my God." And I was like, no, that was the best. Like in the 15-year journey I've had, that's the first physician I've had that's acknowledged
Mhm.
that hasn't approached it as I'm the puzzle master and I'm gonna figure you out. But also hasn't been like, oh, well, if I can't do it, then no one can. So to hear that really
Mhm.
solidified, though, that it's go time, right? That like all of the work, all the prayers, the wishes, the manifestations, right? Like this, I'm about to find out. But especially by the time this airs, we have found out. We will have known for at least a week. If they do pathology on everything, I'm not dying, by the way. I'll get more into it after. The show's
That's a
not
good
about that. But yeah, so there we
clarification.
go. Not
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah.
If the pathology checks out and me and my surgeons are right, I'll know in that moment, just based on the pathology, whether or not it worked, right? They'll be able to give a pretty good prognosis. But there's a chance of some gray area where I might not know for another month when the symptoms usually reoccur.
Mhm.
And so that in and of itself is also a little frustrating, that I go through this huge trade-off of surgery, right? Being cut open, and I still might not get to know right away.
Right.
And that's overwhelming to know that that answer is coming and yet still so far away.
Right.
Um, but it's really, I'm trying to manage my expectations now of, that wonderful, beautiful scenario where it fixes everything in the world. And then the terrible, no good scenario where your options suck. And I'm kind of left with where I am pre-surgery, but now with a surgical wound and bills and, all that.
So when you say you're balancing that, does that mean that you get stuck in the this will solve everything loop, and then maybe the next day you get stuck in the this didn't solve anything loop, or it's
So when I'm more often in the latter, in the I think where I kind of hang out the most is where I've been the past 15 years. But now I have the knowledge that this is the end of the road. This really is a dead end. Before I was presented with false dead ends, right? And had to find an alternate
yes.
route. This will feel far more concrete than ever before. And so how I get out of that is you don't even know what problems this might solve, right? And my surgeons are the same way too. So it's kind of funny to picture them as well on this seesaw, where the actual one doing the surgery on me is like, you're gonna leave better than I found you, because I'm gonna look for things that you're not even saying are a problem, right? That you just get some bonus work done since I'm in there. I'm gonna clean you up. And then the other one, who has the knowledge of this but won't be operating on it, is like, we can make you worse. And so,
Ah, thanks. Thank
right?
you.
But I need that, right? Because I don't want to get overly excited with the one who might not know what he's talking about in this situation. He's acknowledged he's never operated on this. He operates in this area all the time. It's all he does. But for this reason, he's never done that before. Very
Mm-hmm.
few people have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so what
Which
I'm,
is part of it, which was part of your the history of the problem, is
yeah,
that people either didn't believe you or they just said that's not what it is, you're wrong.
yeah. And so in the past, I just had that mindset of, no, there's a solution out there for me, or there's a better
Yeah.
solution than I'm being given. And now like I said, it's go time, and I'm gonna find out like all the trade-offs you made along the way to pursue an answer. I've given up things. I've gone down one-way roads in a sense. And what I'm trying to balance right now is managing that expectation when I come out of it, so all the emotions don't rush me in the moment, right? Like I don't want to go into it thinking it's going to fix everything only to find out I'm worse than before for the first time, right? Like I want to kind of consider it now. But what's really been washing over me, and the kind of what this episode should be about, is God, I've given some stuff up, and can I handle finding out whether or not it was worth it?
Ah,
And
yeah. So that's where the trade-off is, the things that you gave up in order to pursue this.
yeah, if I find out I'm going to be exactly where I was 15 years ago, except now I have none of the things I could have pursued and I didn't pursue, am I going to be okay with that, right? Am I going to
Yeah.
be okay with all the money I've spent, all the time I've spent, all the
Yeah.
relationships I haven't cultivated? I mean, even the conversations I have had in the relationships I have cultivated, this has been the topic for 90% of the year has been my health. And I've,
But that's because it's been at the forefront of your
yes.
year,
Yeah.
that
Well,
it
and
has, or longer than this year. I
and
mean,
would you say this is probably the most I've ever talked about it in the time you've known me?
yes.
That
Yeah.
before I didn't have, and I still, I'm weary to say what it could be, because it might not, right? And so I don't want to go down that road, but
Yeah.
not having the language to describe what you're going through, I've just avoided having conversations with people. It's hard to be believed, but then it's also hard to be seen, right? If you're not fully sharing.
Well, right. And I think that you are adept at putting on a brave face, so to speak. And people don't even know that you're in excruciating pain when indeed you are. And can only think back to how many times you more than likely were, but you didn't share it with me that you were
And that's
in the
funny
moment.
because all I can think about in relation to this is like all the times I didn't show up for you or the show or do something I said I was going to do um because of this. In hindsight, it always felt like a cop out, right? And then but then like the next time it comes about and in the moment, I'm more like what you just shared, and thank you because that'll help carry me through, especially if this doesn't work. But I'm more like, God, how'd you do that? Right. And so
Right.
again, it's like when it comes to trade-offs, it's all mindset, right? And
Oh,
so when it comes to a choice, like a choice, not what I'm going to have for lunch today, right? But like a choice, would you say you're a decisive person?
it depends on what it is.
Okay.
It definitely depends on the situation. If it's like the plot of my book, I would say no. No. I, that is an interesting question.
After you make a
Some
choice, do you wafer? Do you do the oh shoulda coulda woulda, or do you like no, I mean like once you make a choice, is that your choice?
So typically I think I take a while to formulate what the choice will be, and then
Mm-hmm.
once I made it, then I'm in it. Then I've that's where I'm at. Yes.
And when you're thinking about it, do you think about the trade-offs? Do you think about if this, then not that?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I would
Why
have
does that
thought you were,
surprise you?
well, how we, not for, again, it depends on what it is, right? But
Yeah.
you seem
Yeah.
like a just go forth and do it person, and
Yes. And
consequences be damned, because you know you can
oh,
handle them, right? Whereas I seem more like a planner on paper.
mm-hmm. You are more of a planner. And there are times that I am just, oh, just go forth and do it. But I think the older I get, the more I appreciate a plan and the forethought. Whereas I think in the past, I was very much more so like, just do this. Like,
What
now, does it irritate me when it takes someone else a long time to make a decision? Yes.
So for me, like some things, like the car I'm currently driving,
Mm-hmm.
the car that I had the intent of driving into the ground, I drove it into the ground 2 months after buying a house. I was so decision fatigued, not from the house buying. That actually intuitively I knew that it was a zero choice, it was mine. But every choice you make after that, my brain was fried. So when my car broke down, I just called someone in my life who I knew loved new cars and like hangs out at car dealerships and like regularly buys new cars, and like they know her by name, and she follows all the local dealers on YouTube and social media. And I just called her and I was like, I'm ready to invest in a reliable car, right? Like I'm ready for my first car payment ever. Where should we go? So she took me to Toyota. We drove something and I was like, I don't hate it, but it's a walking blind spot. There's a Subaru dealer over there. Everybody I work with drives a Subaru and they all love their Subarus. I asked to test drive a car. He said, what kind? I was like, a SUV. He said, like, okay, color. And I was like, I don't care. And he's like, specifications. I was like, it works. Like that's where I'm at right now, right? So he brought me a Subaru Forester white. Like the first one he pulled, it wasn't on the lot. It was kind of in a like it had to come from their side parking lot or whatever. I test drove it for 10 miles and then filled out all the paperwork and bought it. And for me, everybody was so surprised. But I was like, you know what? Subaru is they're trusted, right? Like it's a trusted name. They got good reviews. I don't have to consumer report this. I know, right? People I know have it and like it. It's a car, I can sell it. And everyone in my life was, and even my grandma was just like, who sat next to me, she's like, you're just buying it right now? And I was like, well, I can't have you drive me around forever. I need a car. Like,
I feel like part of that, though, part of the ability to make that decision, well, first of all, yes, you had to make the decision. You were decision fatigued, but you also had sort of an experience and a knowledge behind you that afforded you the ability to just make that decision right away.
and I haven't second guessed it. I haven't thought of any like even when there's things in it that annoy me, I'm like, oh, it's a car, right? And like same with my house. It's like, oh, this is my house. It just showed up, right? But then there's other things in life where like what I'm going through right now, where like I said, the choices I didn't take kind of are
Right.
haunting me in a way. Um,
And again, appropriate for the last episode that we did on superstition. But so they're haunting you because there's no way to go back in
I
time and
can't take
test
it
that
back.
out. You can't take it back.
And it's more like past Tracy went through so much to get here. And like part of me understands she's the one that will experience the win. She is in the room with us today.
She is.
She is, but there's another part of me that feels like I've failed her in the present if this doesn't work.
Oh, and I don't see it like that at all. I see it as you fighting for her every step of the way by not giving up, by not giving in, by just continuing to pursue this, and that what this is sort of like the final thing. So I don't look at it as you failing her. But then I feel like for me, if I think about past decisions, it's not like I'm tra la la, that's in the past. And even if I have moments of, gee, I wonder what if, there's a bigger part of me that says, but you didn't do that. And there's a reason why you didn't do that. And you're on this path for a
Mm,
reason. So I think I feel more like I remember one time, and my mom asking me, and I think I was 14, like, is this the right decision? Do you think this is the right decision? And it was a pretty big decision. And I said, Mom, no matter what you decide, that's the right decision because it'll be the decision that you make.
and that's just it. Like when I picked a college and I got there and it wasn't right, I didn't regret the choice I made. I just made a new choice and left.
Right.
And there were other people in my life a few years later in a similar situation where their parents were so consumed by the optics of transferring to college and that was seen as a failure or that it wasn't worth the effort and to just stick through with your decision that it caused a rift in the
Yeah.
family because I was on the other side going, it would have been worse for me to stay. And here's how easy it is to move. Right. And like, I've never paid
Oh,
attention to anybody in my life and been like, oh, you transferred college. Right. But I also, after I transferred, they messed up my financial aid and it turned out I couldn't afford it. That my mom had gotten married and everything from my first semester there to me coming back. There was no way I was going to be able to afford coming back and it just wasn't going to work. And so I didn't regret either choice. I took a year off and then I went to a new college and finished there, right? And so I think why this is top of mind for me is this is the first time in my life where I'm like, "Oh, you might have a regret." And that's hard.
oh.
I've like right now I'm just preparing for a major disappointment, but I'm worried that it might shift into a regret and that thing you can't take back. Have you made choices you regret?
Well, probably as a teenager.
Because they say, I mean, a saying that I've hated forever is like when you're on your deathbed, you people always regret the choices they didn't make. And I'm like, I'm sure they regret some they did, but then it's that trade-off thing and how you word it and your mindset, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it also depends on the things you actually did do and went out. Like maybe some people don't regret anything, but I feel like once again, my mindset is one that I feel that regret is a waste of time because it's something you are giving energy and emotion to something in the past and you and since it's in the past you can't change it, you can only heal yourself going forward.
So when you're making a choice, do you try and avoid regret? Or is that not even a part of the process?
Well, one would hope that the choices I'm making would not lead to regret. However, I don't know that in the face of a choice we necessarily think about regret. I don't think that if I have a choice I'm like, oh, but are you going to regret this?
So
Now,
like,
I will say, like, there's one thing that pops up in my head every once in a while that has nothing to do with anyone's, I don't regret my first marriage because why would I regret that? I was in love. We were in love. There was love. I had
yeah,
two beautiful children. I have a stepdaughter. Like, I do not regret that at all. Um,
it just didn't
there's
turn out how you initially hoped it would when you
right,
made the
right,
choice. Yeah.
right,
Things
right.
changed.
Exactly. But one time I had applied for this position at some real estate office. I don't know. And I didn't get it. And then a week later, I got a phone call and they were like, I want you to be my assistant. And you'd be my assistant for a year and then you'd work up to be this like a real estate agent. And I had just gotten this other stupid job. And I was like, that's okay. I've got this other job. And this is like when I I wasn't even 30 yet, I don't think. And so even now, 30 some years later, I'm like, man, I wonder what would have happened if I had
Right?
taken
Like,
that.
where would, okay, so next question. What's the
Oh,
longest you've had to wait to know if you've made a good choice? This has been going on for 15 years, but the
yeah.
choice I made was a decade ago, almost to the day, probably. I was 28 years old.
Okay.
And so, when we talk about regret or choices, right? Like relationships is a huge one. People regret letting someone go because in hindsight they seem better than what you did,
Yeah,
right? Like
that's
everything's
fake
that,
news, just if
right?
you're wondering, all right.
Jobs are really common, right? I regret
Yep.
not getting it, not going for it, not taking an opportunity, right? Like that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge thing with regret, I think, is missed opportunity more so than it didn't play out.
Yes.
Because you can start over, like,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, it would have just been huge opportunities. I feel like I didn't pursue.
Okay.
School, what school you go to, if you go to college, if you pursue higher education, purchases, homes, cars, where you live. But just like, what's the longest you've had to wait to know if it was a good choice or not?
I
Or
don't
is it
know that there's an end date yet.
really? Or
um,
do you just make the choice and it's done? That was a good choice, right? And it's not
that's
until
the
it
choice I
it
made.
sours
And
that you think about it.
but even if it sours, it still was a good choice at the time. It was the choice I made, and I made it for a reason. And so I'm not trying to like gaslight myself or anything like that. It's that no matter what, even if like I make a choice and then like I I don't know, let's just pick something simple. I make a choice to go to some get together, some party, and I don't really have that great of a time. And in fact, I'm like, wow, I actually wish I would have stayed home and just read. That's still, it's not that I regret that choice. It's that now I go, remember this
Oh,
next time.
now that I have this information,
Yes.
but let's say you would have stayed home and been reading and been like, I really could have used some fun. I should have went to that party, right? Like in both
Yeah.
instances, you don't know how the other one would have actually played out, right?
Right. Right. This is not, it's a wonderful life. Yeah.
So, how do you handle that uncertainty that comes with making a significant life decision? Is there a way to manage uncertainty?
Wow, that's a good question. Is there a way to manage uncertainty? I guess I feel that all of life is uncertain and that at any moment anything can happen. So nothing is ever certain in our life. And so the way that I manage uncertainty is just to acknowledge it and to try and just be in the present moment.
Because I don't know if it would be classified as uncertainty, but like I try to reduce as many unknowns, right? We have our known unknowns and unknown unknowns.
Well, see, here's a key fact that everyone needs to know, right? What work do you do? You're
I'm in
in
risk management, and
yes,
this so
all
some
right.
of these terms are we're mitigating risk. Risk is both threat and opportunity. Hey, heads up, boss Ken, I'm teaching people the word risk isn't bad. It's threat and opportunity. But so yeah, so for uncertainty, and even before I got into risk management, like for me, whether it's planning a trip or this decision I made, I I like to know specifically what I'm giving up before I make my choice. I want to make a very data informed or data driven decision that if I do this, this is what it'll look like most likely. And what I'm not doing, right? And I want to know exactly what I'm not doing so that I'm making a conscious, intentional choice. And I think that's what's so hard about this is it was so thoroughly informed and it's gone exactly
Yes.
how I thought it would go so far, except
Yeah.
now I'm going to find out if it pays off, right?
So I'd like to change my answer because I still stand by,
Yeah.
life is uncertain and to be in the moment. But have I actually do more things like you do now. I do like to, like when we planned our trip to Paris, boy, everything was just like, this is this, that is that. We've got our itinerary, we've got this, we know what day we're going here, so that we did mitigate risks. And try to figure out the unknowns. So I will say you have rubbed off in a good way for those
Yeah.
kinds of things. But go on with so I just want to talk about like the fact that this you have done pretty much everything that any human being could do to mitigate risk in this situation.
I think where the potential regret could come is could I have done both? Could I have pursued this track and
Oh,
also the burden? So the one of the choices I made was like pursuing an answer, not just a band-aid temporary series of treatments that could cause new issues, but pursuing an answer and a treatment. That's what I wanted. First, I want to know what it is. And then if there's a way to fix it, no matter the risk, I don't want another 20, 30 years of this. I'll take the risk of fixing it. The pursuit of that has eaten up all of my time, a significant portion of my energy, and a lot of money and resources, right? There are plenty of other people who have pursued a life that isn't just about their own healing and done other things in the meantime. And I know, like, I have gone to school, I have done other things, but they've all been things I could do slowly and didn't involve a relationship with another person or raising a child or pursuing certain hobbies or careers or things like that because I knew both I'm chronically in pain and have, I am ill. Um, and then the seeking of that out, and then also the constant up down of it, right? And then while trying to treat myself or find treatment options in the meantime to just get through it. And that when it is really bad, I miss work and I have to make up work, right? And so but there are plenty of people who have this in different places in different ways who have pursued a life, right? And who have made certain choices. And so I think it, if this doesn't solve all the world's problems for me, I'll be wondering like, should I have tried harder to do both? Whereas in the moment and every year I have kind of checked back in on that decision and sometimes I've kind of played around with making a new choice or trying it. And I've just decided like to be kind to myself, right? And to just, but like a life that's only about you is hard. One of the things, you asked earlier, like, where do you get caught up in your head? Like, one of my fantasies right now, and that's pushing me through, there's a potential they might write a paper about this. This could really help advance medicine in this area
and other
and
people,
other
right?
people. And
Ah,
that will be so huge for me because, as you shared, 2 years ago, I was told so there's two different things I could have or simultaneously. 2 years ago, I was told by a very competent, skilled, experienced group of physicians wasn't a thing. And 5 years ago, I was told the other thing by, again, very competent people did not exist and was not a thing. And even if it did, there was no way to treat it. 3 years ago, I had surgery to look for it, and they told me they couldn't find it. Whereas now at the Mayo and with the access they have, they think they found it in an MRI scan. I've had plenty of MRI scans in 15 years. And so part of this is the advancement of technology and medicine. But um, for me, what's carrying me through is just like the excitement of somebody else not having to go 15 years, that potentially this could help train current and future doctors. Because when they tell me how rare it is, I don't think it's rare. It's taken me
Agreed.
15. I've been screaming for years about what this is.
I think
Um,
what's rare is people acknowledging, doctors being aware of it and acknowledging it and
yeah.
being trained in it.
And I will say I have had plenty of physicians who have acknowledged it's most likely is what we think it is, or it most likely is something. It's not that they don't believe me. There's
Mhm.
just nothing we can do about it, which I refuse to accept, right? But so right now, yeah, I'm balancing all those fantasies of what this could be while at the same time just knowing like 28 days from today I find out, right? Like, and for
Yeah.
the first time it's just, I think like you said with the relationship stuff, when you got in the relationship, your hope when you got married, your hope was that you got married. You
Hmm.
expected it. I don't think you expected it to end in divorce. You knew
No.
that could happen, but that's not what you're aiming towards, right? And so right now it's just like that outcome. I'm so aware of the outcomes. Um, but yeah, so it's a balancing act when it comes to trade-off, but I'm worried about future Tracy. And if this doesn't play out, right? Like I know my mindset, I'll have support, I can deal with the disappointment, but how will that affect future decision making? Will I suddenly make decisions out of fear? Will I continue to
Oh,
have the courage that I've had the past 10 years to just boldly make a choice and pursue it?
that is a good question and one that you can't answer right now.
Do you let fear make does it affect your decisions? Like when as much as I knew this was my house, as soon as I got off the phone with my realtor and was like, "Yep, make the offer." I pulled over on Highway 100 and almost threw up and had to call my dad,
Yeah.
my stepdad, and I wanted to do the thing where I just called my family and was like, surprise, I bought a house. And instead, what I got to do was from the side of a freeway having a panic attack, first one in my life. Got to say, hey, hey, stepdad, I just put an offer on a house, surprise. By the way, I feel like I'm gonna throw up, and I'm really like every choice I've ever made in life, specifically this one, like, should I take it back? And he goes, I did the same thing. He's like, he thinks he did throw up. And so that was the only time I didn't let fear get in the way. I didn't call it back, but I think that was the first time I ever felt the fear and the weight of a choice and felt like I couldn't take it back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that there have been moments in my life that I let fear dictate it, but I try
Mhm.
not to. I definitely try not to do that.
I think looking to the future, and this
Yeah.
is probably going to be a huge episode, I feel like, but like how do you define success when you're making a choice? Do you even bother to define success?
I think, I mean, wow, that's such a loaded question. And once again, when you ask the question about how long do you wait until you know if it was the right decision, when they close the casket, I don't know.
You
I
know,
mean,
I
and
heard
what
this.
is success?
I read something on like a Tumblr Reddit post once where it was someone who was like a death doula or worked in hospice, said that there is this one woman who is just all giggles and said it was just all so much fun as she passed. And I was like, I want that. Like
I want that
I
too.
want
I'll take that. I'll have what she's having.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope I didn't freak anybody out. I'm in this moment of I'm trying to embrace the trade-offs in life, while still pursuing my dream with like courage and resilience. And so hopefully everybody else is
Oh,
kind of thinking that
beautiful.
way too. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. And I think that's wonderful to consider that. Do you want, are you pulling a card or do you want me to pull a card?
Well, let me just quick. I'll pull a tarot card and Amy
All
will, if
right.
you'll interpret it next week.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh. Oh, I got the three of cups, three ladies
Wow.
dancing with the cups in their hands. So my demeanor might affect your reading or other people's. I suddenly feel really good about my trade off, and everything's fine. Everything's fine. We'll see you in a week.
I think that's wonderful. All right.
Just pull
wonderful
a card.
people.
Just pull a card. If you have to make a choice, that's going to be the new thing for me. Pull a tarot card. And if you don't like it, pull a different one.
I make many of my choices with tarot in mind. Anyways, if this episode spoke to you or your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day.
Bye.